Okay, good morning everybody, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Perashat Vaera. Today's class, I want to focus actually on something very interesting. And it's a class that we're going to hear ideas. Maybe some of them we heard, some of them are new. I also do want to just send out a maybe warning that this class is not appropriate for all ages. Okay, I know many parents listen to these classes with their children. They tell me, Rabbi, I drive with my kids, I play your video in the car, and I appreciate that very much. If your kids are younger, we'll be going into different ideas today that maybe are not age appropriate yet for them. So that's just a disclaimer. Okay, here we go, everybody. Perashat Vaera. I think a lot of people just got excited about what the class is going to be about. Okay, here we go. Perashat Vaera. There's a very interesting halacha we know in Judaism. There are people that we're not allowed to marry, right? There are certain unions that are forbidden. Okay, think of some. I'm sure you could think of some. There are many, many people. The Torah has a whole list. And actually, we read about it on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. We read about the forbidden marriages. A person's not allowed to marry their sister. They're not allowed to marry their mother. They're not allowed to marry their father's wife. They're not allowed to marry their mother-in-law. They're not allowed to marry their grandma. They're not allowed to marry their daughter-in-law or their daughter. Right? There's relationships upwards, downwards, sideways. And there's many forbidden marriages all around. One of the people that are forbidden for us to marry is an aunt. A man cannot marry his aunt. Okay? He is allowed to marry his niece. Okay? So uncle, niece is allowed. Like who in history do we know married their niece? Many people. But maybe, I don't know many, but we know of one, according to our tradition. Who married their niece? Anyone know? Give it a couple of seconds. Avraham and Sarah. Excellent. Avraham was Haran's sister, a brother, and he married his daughter. Okay, very good. Who else? Mordechai and Esther. Bat Dodo. Right? According to the opinion that they got married, Mordechai and Esther were uncle and niece. Now, uncle niece is allowed. What's not allowed is the other way. A aunt and a nephew. Again, a niece and her uncle is allowed, but a girl can marry her uncle, but a girl cannot marry her nephew. Okay, does that make sense? It's two completely different relationships. Yes, you're allowed to marry your niece, you're not allowed to marry your aunt. Okay, if you're a girl, you're allowed to marry your uncle, you're not allowed to marry you're allowed to marry your uncle, you're not allowed to marry your nephew. Again, weird, gross, right? I got it. Not talking about is it weird or not. I'm talking about is it allowed. Okay, halachically, it's allowed. One is allowed to marry their niece. They're not allowed to marry their aunt. We find in this week's parasha a union of someone who married their aunt. That should be forbidden. Pasuk tells us in our parasha, black and white, chapter 6, pasuk 20. Vayikach Amram, remember Amram, the Gadol Hador, Amram, the head of the generation, the leader of the generation, Amram, who was the son of Kehat. Vayikach Amram et Yocheved dodato. He took Yocheved, his aunt, lo leisha. So here we have a marriage of a nephew marrying the aunt. That is a problem. Now, you'll say, Rabbi, the Torah wasn't given yet. What are you wasting our time for? Very easy question, which is a good answer, and it's the answer. However, I just want to maybe understand a little bit deeper, because the truth is, if the Torah is going to later on forbid this union, that means there's something wrong in it. So although it's allowed because the Torah wasn't given yet, but later on in time, the Torah is going to forbid this marriage. So although today it's okay, it's not going to be okay one day. And if Amram, if there's something wrong with this marriage, Amram, who was a big rabbi, a scholar, the leader of the generation, shouldn't Amram know that conceptually there's something wrong in this union? Right? If it's going to be frowned upon later, then even now it's not okay. Maybe it's not forbidden because Torah wasn't given yet. But we know that the tzaddikim, they had access to the Torah. As an example, we know Adam HaRishon was given commandments by God, 6 of them. And then Noach was given the 7th, and then Avraham was given more, Brit Milah and others, and Yaakov. So each one added until the Torah gave them all 613. But they had prophecy, they had a deeper understanding, they had a connection to God. So why is it that Amram, who was a big rabbi, big leader of the generation, why would he enter something that would later on become forbidden? Why get involved in the mess? Avoid the whole problem. There's a similar question to who? Who else could you think of? Who else could you think of that did something that was later on, after the Torah, would become forbidden? Similar to Yaakov. Yaakov married sisters. This is a lot of ink, my friends. A lot of ink is all spilled on how come Yaakov married 2 sisters. Okay? And again, it was before the Torah, but still, one of the answers, by the way, that they give about Yaakov is that ideally he would have liked to keep that commandment. He would have liked to follow the Torah before it was given and not marry sisters. There was one problem. His father-in-law tricked him. His father-in-law put Leah, and now he's married to Leah. So what are you going to do? You're going to divorce her? What are you going to do? Not marry Rachel? You gave each one a certain commitment. You gave Rachel your word that you marry her. You already put a ring on Leah's finger, and Yaakov felt, it's a beautiful answer, Yaakov felt that although it's nice to be mahmir, which is to be strict and not marry sisters, but I don't want to be strict if it's going to affect somebody else's life. It's not a time. There are times in life to be mahmir. There are times in life not to be mahmir. That's a very important lesson that you need to know. Now again, later on it wasn't a humrah. Later on in life it became a halakha. Torah was given. So over there you can't play games. When it's a halakha, it's a halakha. But sometimes in life a person needs to have the wisdom, the knowledge to know where there's halakha and when there is not a halakha, when it's just an extra. When it's an extra, now there's room. A rabbi needs to know when there's room to make leniencies depending on the situation. I'll give you an example. A child is growing up in a home that he is becoming more observant, or she is becoming more observant. The family is not on the page. The family breaks Shabbat. The family eats not kosher. The child doesn't want to do those things. But the family wants him to come with them. They want the child to come on a Shabbat trip. They're going out. Or the parents want the child to come into a restaurant that's not kosher. These are very complicated questions, especially considering the fact that children need the approval of their parents. That's heavy. That weight of needing the emotional approval of parents, that shouldn't be taken lightly. So you can't just tell the child, well, disassociate from your family. Don't care about them. If you need to leave your house, but don't go with them, right? So big rabbis are needed to address these questions. Every one of these questions needs to be addressed by a competent local Orthodox rabbi who understands the child, the family dynamic, the situation, who understands halakha, to know where there's no room for leniencies, where there is room for leniency. Okay? Yaakov over here marries 2 sisters because he felt this is not a time that I should be strict. Anyways, that's Yaakov. I want to come back though to our class. Our class is again involving Amram. He marries his aunt Yocheved. Again, Yocheved is his aunt because she's his father's sister. It's his father's kehat, and his father had a sister, Yocheved. She was the daughter of Levi. Levi had, as far as we know, 4 kids. Levi had 3 sons, Gershon, Kehat, Merari, and a girl, Yocheved. And then Kehat, had a son, Amram. Amram marries the aunt, Yocheved. And my question, again, not my question, the question that's asked by many, is how is this allowed? Again, it was allowed technically, but why wasn't Amram strict in this regard? Okay? You know of the commandments, you know one day it's going to be forbidden. Play it safe already from now. Avoid this union. What are you getting involved in something that later on is going to be forbidden? Not only that, but who comes from this union? Who's born out of all of this? All of this leads to the birth of the leader of the Jewish people, Moshe Rabbeinu. Why does Hashem want it that Moshe should be born from this union? Something that is a little bit sticky, something that's not so glatt. Why does God want that? Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson has an essay where he brings amazing ideas, and I like to bring what he says and then add some ideas of my own. But basically, to understand all of these questions, we have to go back to understanding gender roles. Today, very complicated. Today, the world, you Google gender roles and all the memes and all the ideas that you see are about ancient gender roles and stereotypes, and really it shouldn't. But really, according to Judaism, according to our values and hashkafa, the man and woman, they each have a role. We have to realize that. There's a role of a man, there's a role of a woman. And to blur the roles would be to completely misunderstand what each one's supposed to do, and it doesn't help anybody. In life, if you want to become great, you need to know what your role is. In every relationship, there's a role. Yeah? As the saying goes, equal but different. We're equal, but we're different. A man and woman are equal, but they're different. They each have a different role. Just because they're different doesn't mean that they're not equal. You have two partners in a business. One's in charge of the tech. One's in charge of the marketing. They're different roles. And imagine one were to come and say, I want to be the same as you. The company would flop, right? To succeed in any relationship, has to be clear what the role of each person in the relationship is. When it comes to a marriage, there is a role that each has to play. And it's not that the woman's in the kitchen and the man's, and that's not where I'm going with this. Okay? But in general, the way the Kabbalah refers to it is that the man is what we call the mashpia. The man is the influencer. The woman is what we call the mekabel. The woman is the receiver. The role in the marriage is the man is the provider, the woman is the receiver. In general, men feel fulfillment by giving, by projecting, by providing. A woman feels fulfillment in receiving, in internalizing, in being. Men are very independent, right? Try, if you're a lady, try telling your husband when he's going on the highway and he made a wrong turn, try telling him that the Waze tells him he should go a different way. See what he does, right? Men will get very angry, right? I don't need the Waze, I know the way. I'm the Waze. She should listen to me. Problem is that the voice of the Waze is a lady. Change it to a man and the guy has no problem listening, right? That's the biggest problem. But in why is it that men have such a hard time following instructions? Because men need to feel independent. The woman, she doesn't mind listening. Which way should I go? That way? I'll go that way. You want me to go this way? I'll go this way. No problem, because women are dependent. Right? Biologically, by the way, we understand this. In the relationship, in the union, in the intimate moments of a man and woman, the man is the giver. The man gives the seed. The zera, the sperm. The woman receives. So biologically, the man's giving, the woman's receiving. That's why, by the way, in general, the mashpia is always on top, right? The giver is on top. The rain, as an example, gives. Chesed, when we speak of chesed is to give. The rain comes down. The rain is chesed. The rain's on top, coming from the up, down. The earth is the mekabel. The earth's on the bottom. The man is, in the marriage, in the moment of intimacy, the man is supposed to be on top. There's halachot of positions, believe it or not. And the man, the position in the union, the man is supposed to be on top. It's a more appropriate position. Again, I'm not going to say the other way is forbidden, but it's a more appropriate position. Why? Because the man, again, being a mashpia, being a giver, the man gives, and the giver is always coming from up to down. That is why, by the way, we know on Friday night when we do hamotzi, we're supposed to take 2 loaves of bread. And he's supposed to put them together, right? Take 2 loaves of bread, put them together, and he's supposed to do hamotzi. Now, how should the breads be positioned? Let's take 2 different colors. How are the breads supposed to be positioned when you're doing hamotzi? So according to the Kabbalah, again, it's supposed to be one up. Let's say this is the bottom and this is the bottom. The bottoms are supposed to be touching. And it's supposed to be one up, one down. Like this. Not only that, but there's actually, according to the Kabbalah, you're supposed to take from a specific loaf, depending on the meal that you're in. Friday night, which loaf are you supposed to take from? When you do the bracha, Baruch Mekadesh HaShabbat V'lechem Mishneh, right? We have all these psukim that we like to add. Baruch Atah Adonai Elokeinu Melech Haotzih Min Haaretz, right? Which bread are you supposed to take from on Friday night? Friday night you're supposed to take from the bottom bread. Okay? Shabbat lunch you're supposed to take from the upper bread. You're supposed to take a bite from the bread on top. Seudah Shlishit is actually a union. And you're supposed to like turn it this way and then this way and take from both. Why? Because Friday night represents the bride. The bride, like we explained, the bride, the woman, she's on the bottom. Right? She receives. So Friday night is the kala. Bo'i kala, bo'i kala. Shabbat is a marriage between the kala, the Shabbat, and us. Shabbat is the, I guess you could say, it's the woman's time to shine. Friday night. Shabbat day, morning, is the man. Right? That's the, again, I'm saying things I don't even understand myself. But it's just cool. Shabbat day is the man. Right? So we take from the upper bread. Seudah Shlishit is the marriage. The union. From both. That's why, by the way, in the Amidah, we say, interesting prayer. We say, let me open it and read it to you exact words. We say the following. In the Amidah, open the Amidah of Shabbat. We say, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu. God and Hashem, God of our forefathers. Retzeh na b'mnuchatenu. Please accept our Sabbath. Kadeshenu b'misvotecha. Sanctify us with your commandments. Sim helkeinu v'toratach. Allow us to have a portion in your Torah. Sabe'enu mitubach. Satiate us from your goodness. Same'ach nafshenu b'shu'atach. Gladden our souls with your salvation. V'taher libenu. And purify our hearts so that we can serve you. Le'ovdecha be'emet. Ve'anhilenu Hashem Elokeinu. And please let us inherit with love, with wanting, Shabbat kochecha, your holy Sabbath. Ve'yanuhu. What's the next word? Ve'yanuhu. You're not sure, right? Because there's three different answers. Friday night we say, Ve'yanuhu ba. Kol Yisrael mekadesh shemecha. Let all of Israel rest on her. Ve'yanuhu ba. We're calling the Shabbat a female. Shabbat day, we say Ve'yanuhu bo. We're calling it a man. Shabbat afternoon, Ve'yanuhu bam. Plural. According to the Kabbalah, it makes a lot of sense. Because again, Friday night is the attribute of the woman. That's ba, female. Shabbat day is the man, bo. Shabbat afternoon is the bam. It's the union. Very, very amazing things over here. And therefore, the idea of a man giving, we see how it even permeates into our halacha, into our prayers. The man's the mashpia, right? Women need to connect. The pasuk says, God told Chava, ve'el ishech teshukatech. That's why men always need to give solutions. They always need to give advice. They always have to change the situation. The man, being a giver, right? His wife comes, she complains. What does the man do immediately? All the fights, by the way, between husband and wife, 90% of them are because of this one problem. When the wife's talking, the husband's thinking, how could I solve this problem? I need to give her a solution. Because once a husband and wife, they were fighting all the time. So the guy came to his rabbi, he's like, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. I give up. Every time my wife complains, I give her an easy solution, and she cries even more. You don't understand me, right? What am I supposed to do, Rabbi? The rabbi says, you're not understanding. Your wife doesn't need your advice. Your wife's very smart. She's capable. She knows how to solve the problem. She's not looking for your advice. So, Rabbi, what does she want? She wants your support. Next time she complains, next time she asks for help, show her that you're supportive. Guy said, okay, Rabbi, great idea. Next day he goes home. He's ready to apply the rabbi's brilliant advice. He comes home. He sees his wife on a chair trying to screw in the light bulb. She's almost falling. She says, honey, I need your help. He looks up. He says, honey, you're doing great. Keep it up. Right? Okay. So the man's always looking to change. The woman is happy to just be. Okay? Doesn't mean, by the way, that woman can't give. Doesn't mean that. Matter of fact, women actually give more than men. I'll tell you a secret over here. Although man is the chesed and he's the giver, and the woman is gevura and she's the receiver, but really, after the man gives the lady a little sperm, a little seed, what happens? She takes that and she actually gives much better. She gives a baby. He gave a little drop. She gives him back a beautiful living child. She gives him a soul. She gives him someone. So who's doing the better giving? Really, the lady could give, but she gives different than the man. She gives through silence, not through noise. Right? She gives by being rather than by projecting. She doesn't need to dominate. The man needs to dominate a situation. He needs to be there and he needs to give and needs to show that he's providing. Right? Very important for men and women to understand this. For a woman to understand that men need to feel like they are the breadwinner, like they are providing. A man needs to feel that sense of independence and of projection, of giving. And men need to understand that women need to feel connection. They need to feel like they are being given that time and attention that they so need. So these are the roles of men and women, right? The Gemara even says that a man comes home and he gives his wife wheat. She takes the wheat, right? Man comes home, he gives his wife grapes. She takes the grapes. But what does she do with those grapes? She takes it and she produces something more beautiful. She gives him back wine. She gives him back a loaf of bread. She gives him back a beautiful baby, right? So let's go back now to our question. Why can't a man marry his aunt? Why can't you marry your aunt? Because an aunt, in the relationship of an aunt and nephew, who's going to be the dominating force? Who's going to be the giver? Usually in an aunt-nephew relationship, the aunt is on top. Because the aunt, she's the one that's older, she's the one that's giving, she's the one that's providing. In an aunt-nephew relationship, the nephew's ability, the man's ability, in this case it's the nephew, his ability to give, to provide is going to be limited. He's not going to be able to fully give and project and be him. It's limited. There's a certain cap because it's his aunt that he's married to. This is one of the ideas that's given. It's a very deep idea from the Me'or V'Shemesh he quotes and others. But this is the depth. Again, we're talking about deep stuff today. So this is usually why an uncle can marry his niece, because the uncle, the man, is going to be able to give. She's his niece. There's nothing that's suffocating that ability for him to give. But when it's the other way around, when it's your aunt, you feel intimidated. You're not going to be able to fully be who you need to be. If that's the case, my friends, we go back to Moshe. And now we ask, why did Moshe come from a relationship that actually was the opposite? In this case, the answer is because Moshe, who was Moshe? Moshe is the man who got the Torah from God and gave it to Jewish people. He brought it down to the world. Moshe brought the Torah not only to the Jews, he gave it to the Jews, but really through the Jews, it's supposed to trickle and affect the whole world. Moshe is, if we could open the idea, Moshe is the one who connects man to God. Moshe is the person who taught mankind the entire Torah. And God is teaching Moshe a lesson that in order to teach Torah, what's the number one ingredient that you need to teach. To teach Torah, one needs to be humble. To be able to be a conduit for the Word of God, I need to remove my ego. I need to stop thinking of myself as a mashpia, as a giver, and I need to be able to instead receive. I have to be open to receiving. Receiving the knowledge and the wisdom from God, but more importantly maybe, to be able to receive and open up myself to my students. If a rabbi, if a teacher enters a relationship with ego, with arrogance, their goal is to give over this information, and they close themselves up to being able to hear, they're not able to receive. So first of all, the student's not going to want to accept that information. Secondly, if a student has a question, the teacher's not going to want to hear the question. The teacher's going to say, no, it's not a good question, don't ask questions, what I said is the right way, don't worry. Remember our rabbis say, Ezehu chacham halomer mikol adam. Who is truly the wise person? It's the person that learns from everybody. A person that is arrogant cannot learn from everybody. A person that's arrogant won't even learn from their teacher. To truly be a teacher, the number one ingredient to be a teacher is actually to be a student. The first thing we know about Moshe, the Mishnah says, Moshe kibel Torah. Moshe received the Torah. Moshe was a receiver. Moshe needed the attribute of the woman. Moshe, like the wife, like the kala, like the Friday night, Moshe needed to be a receiver. Moshe needed to stop thinking of himself as a giver, of independent, of dominating. Moshe needed to open himself up to hear the word of God, to hear the questions of the people, to hear the cries of those around him. Moshe needed to be born from a marriage where the female, like as we say in English, wore the pants in the relationship. He needed to be born from a relationship where the woman reigned supreme, where the woman was the one who dominated the relationship. He needed to be in a relationship where the woman, was in charge, because that gave Moshe the ability to open himself up and to realize that he needed to be able to be like a woman, in the sense that he needed to be able to hear, to receive. Lomed mikol adam. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moshe got the Torah from Sinai. Our rabbis say he learned from Sinai humility. Sinai was a mountain, but it was a very humble mountain. It was the lowest of mountains. God didn't give the Torah on the Alps. He didn't give the Torah on the Rockies. On a little hill that you never heard of. You won't go skiing on this hill. There's no fun slopes over here. There's no black or double black. Right? He got the Torah from Sinai, very humble. But that's what one needs if one is going to really mashpia. Because in order to truly give, first I have to have received. First I had to internalize the message. When I internalize, I can now give. There's an amazing story told of the Chafetz Chaim. There was once a crisis in the Jewish town, and they asked the rabbi, the Chafetz Chaim, if there was any way that he could go speak to the judge to plead the case. So the Chafetz Chaim gets there, and they had a translator who was going to translate for the Chafetz Chaim from Yiddish to Russian. Chafetz Chaim didn't have a good, Russian, so he spoke in Yiddish, and the translator was going to speak in between the Chafetz Chaim and the judge. And they get in front of the judge, and the Chafetz Chaim starts talking and crying and explaining the situation of the Jewish people and how they have to please have mercy on them and they can't raise the taxes, whatever the specific case was. And after he's done talking, the translator is about to talk, and all of a sudden the judge says, okay, we'll alleviate the burden of taxes. We'll remove the taxes. And the translator was shocked. The translator said, well, I didn't say anything yet. Do you speak Yiddish? And the judge said, I don't have to speak Yiddish. He spoke from his heart. The heart is a universal language. You see, my friends, if we really want to be successful in teaching something, it has to be something that we internalize, something that was in our heart, something that we believe in. When we believe in it, we'll be able to give it. When we believe in it, when we have it, when we received. The first step to being a teacher is to first be a student, to first receive. First, I have to be like a woman in that sense. And that is the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu comes from such a union. I think these are very, very amazing ideas, helping us really understand general dynamic of the relationship, also understanding specifically, we're all teachers, even if you're not a rabbi, even if you're not a teacher in school, we're all teaching. To teach means to have humility, to be able to approach a student, not from a place of arrogance, not from a place of superiority, right? Our rabbis say, Lo ha-kabdan melamed. If one is kabdan, if one is stubborn, they're not going to be able to teach. A student has a question, and instead of hearing his question, you're going to think that he didn't hear you, and you're just going to repeat what you said, and the kid's like, no, but I have a. Are you listening to me? No, I hear you, but are you listening? No, I understand. I just want to have. No, you're not listening, right? To have the humility as parents to say, maybe we weren't clear. Maybe they have a question. Let me hear them. Let me first open myself up, and then we'll be able to be the most amazing parents, teachers, influencers, educators that we can be. Okay, everyone, we'll stop over here. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. God willing, we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.